Alleluia. Om Mani Padme Om. Allah Satnam.
Welcome. You're watching Harmony and Diversity. And today we're speaking with Ian Hamilton from the Focolare movement. Thanks for coming back again, Ian. There's a lot about the Focolare movement that is worth exploring. There's some two basic principles that Kara Lubitsch had illuminated for her. And one was Jesus amongst us, where we're gathered together. He will be present. And the other one was Jesus forsaken. How do those two move as the more or less the fabric which holds the Focolare movement together?
Well, when I spoke to you before, right at the beginning, I spoke to you about the sense of desolation within and then going out towards the other and then refinding the resurrection. So Kara, in her spirituality, says that there is like a coin on two sides of a coin. We'll know there are two sides of a coin. On one side is unity, which is the presence of Jesus amongst us, and on the other side is Jesus forsaken. Jesus forsaken is the suffering. So we cannot divide the two because Jesus suffered and rose again. So we as Christian are the resurrection people. So it means that if I really want to be Christian, I must take on this suffering of Jesus, which would be the suffering, somebody who's suffering in my neighbor, or something that's not good, or something. We all suffer. We all know what it means to suffer. And many of us are afraid of suffering, but I really think that Jesus is already, let's say, has brought the resurrection as a result of the suffering that he suffered for us and was willing to die for us. Yeah. And so in a certain sense, we need to die for one another. In other words, that means that I should be ready to take on the suffering that either I feel or that I find in my brother. And if I really do that well, then there should be the resurrection. And so this is the dynamic that we have. It's in a certain sense, you could say it's a spiritual alchemy. If you love the suffering, if you take on the suffering, then we will be led to the resurrection.
But the point you're making there too, though, is that I could take on my own suffering, but you're saying that you take on the suffering of your brother. So give me an example of what that would look like, say in your home, with the Focolare.
I'll give you an example. This is a number of years ago. I was living with somebody. I mean, we all are part of the human condition, but I had a huge amount of difficulty with this person. But I knew within myself that I had to somehow absorb this conflict that we had. Because I really believe that Jesus really puts us into situations because he knows that we can handle them, and because he knows that there can be a resurrection if I'm willing to take on whatever the situation might be. So now this relationship was, I don't know whether it was him or me or what it was, but anyway, I really felt that somehow something had to change. And I really prayed a lot about it, and I really tried to love him. And then one day, I don't know, just out of the blue, I thought, I've got to do something. So I bought him a jar of Vegemite, and I gave him the jar of Vegemite, and everything changed. So for me, Jesus really does. If we really want to forgive, if we really want to take on the other, if we really want to forgive, because we have to forgive. It might be my fault, so I have to forgive myself, but it might also be the other person's fault. But, I think one of the greatest Christian let's say, virtues is forgiveness.
Yes.
When we talk here all the time, Pope Francis talking about mercy. So we have to have mercy on ourselves, but also mercy on the other, because we are different. And so we need to be able to love the other where they're at, and not to judge the other, because one of the most terrible things that we can do to the other is judge the other.
Yes.
Because as soon as we start judging, we, in a certain sense, destroy anything that of beauty that could happen within myself and within the other.
Yeah. Because judgment is all about you. It's you that's making the judgment. Yes. So it's powerful. So the Focolare movement is fairly widespread. What do you think is the fruit of the Focolare movement? What's the most beautiful piece of fruit hanging on the tree that's been the outcome of the movement itself?
Well, I think it's transformed so many relationships, especially, let's say, on the interfaith level, because, I mean, in a certain sense, in the past, with the Jews, with the Muslims, with the Hindus, they were like the other, but incomprehensible. And I think that because, in a certain sense, Cara said, okay, there's incomprehension, I don't understand. Well, take on that forsakenness. Take it on and say, Jesus, I accept this not understanding, I accept this, and then go towards the other. And it's not, I'm not the one, I'm not the good person. If I take on the suffering of the separation, then it is Jesus who changes everything.
Yes.
And so I cannot say that I'm the good one who is changing the situation.
No.
It's Jesus
yeah.
that changes the situation. So we cannot become, let's say, proud or say, you know, how wonderful I am, look what I've managed to do. No. We remain humble because we realize that going towards the other, trying to love the other, doing my part, then Jesus changes the situation and we have the resurrection.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's a major input to religions per se. We'll take a break. We'll be back in a moment.
Mani Alleluia. Mani
Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity. We're speaking with Ian Hamilton from the Focolare movement. Yes, Ian, we had a little mention there before and in earlier conversation that Karolowicz was notable really for her capacity to see the essence within all religions and from all religions. Now, one of the things that you are now is a secretary of the Jewish Christian Muslim Association. Tell us about that.
Well, I think that in a certain sense within the Focolare we have this call. I mean, going back to right in the beginning when I said, you know, that I had this incredible experience with this person from the streets. And so, in a certain sense, we're called to anything that is possibly a little bit difficult. And I find it incredibly challenging, actually, to be a part of something like this, because if you look at the Jews, I mean, they are, in a certain sense, the people who gave us who we are as Christians. And the Muslims who came after that, but they have got a whole different kind of take on religion, but certainly the one God. And I find it incredibly stimulating. One of the things, before I became the secretary, I'm a bit of an ideas person, and one of the ideas that I had was that maybe we as, let's say, people who believe in the book, maybe we could sit down together and share our spirituality and understand from each other the things that mutually can inspire us. And so what we did, there were two of us. There was another person called David Schutz. Together, he did one group and I did another group, where we certainly hoped that there would be both representatives from the Jews, the Muslims and the Christians, where we would sit down and we would share inspirational writings from the three different faiths.
Yeah.
And that was really very, very good. David Schutz is much better than I am. In fact, my little group didn't last for very long because I don't think I was inspirational enough. But he's a very inspirational kind of person. And so, but he managed to carry his group ahead with this dynamic of Christians, Muslims and Jews sitting down together and sharing their spirituality. And I think that's a very, very beautiful thing to be able to do. So, yeah, I would say essentially, I feel that, you know, God wants us to create a human family. That's what He wants us to do. And He wants us to take on whatever the challenge might be. And so my part is that, you know, I want to give my life to these brothers and sisters who, in a certain sense, have got so much to give. I mean, they're very different from the Christian spirituality, but I really believe that we are made to be a force for the world, to bring peace to the world.
So the JCMA brings, as you say, the religions of the book eyeball to eyeball, and there is common ground and there is uncommon ground. You're flying a very important flag of the Focolare movement, which has got love written across it, bold. How are you finding that as a tool? Is love a tool for you in that context?
Well, it has to be. It is what I am. It is what I was. It was what I was called to. But I mean, I have to be very respectful. You don't know. I really believe that God leads us, and God leads everyone, not just me, not because I'm part of the Focolare, but God leads every one of us to make a contribution. And I think that this is my contribution in this moment. Maybe my contribution was something different in the future. But I think that more and more, I think that people are understanding that in our diversity we need to come together and we need to try and build something greater. And I think that more and more we need to realize that it is God who is the protagonist of history, that God will change the hearts of men and women as long as we are prepared to put in our tuppence.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So the JCMA is quite an interesting organisation. It's got quite a few little issues hanging from the side. One of them is, I think they go to schools, don't they? The education program. What's that look like? How does it work?
I think that they're doing very well, and I think that they have made quite a significant contribution. I mean, I think they also would like a lot more schools. I mean, there are a lot of Catholic schools that are taking part in it, and they do a series of let's say, I suppose, presentations.
Yeah.
So there's some schools have done, let's say, the course. They're very keen to have a lot more schools involved. But I think, you know, slowly, I think, like a lot of things, if word of mouth and people see that it's really worth something, then it will develop, and I think it is developing. And then, of course, it can only develop in as much as the resources of teachers and of material that they have. Yeah. But I think, you know, the central thing is that they need teachers who are really committed to bringing the idea of you know, the three religions of the book, you know, who we really are.
Yes. So there's also, I think recently they just had a women's conference. Is that for women's spirituality? Is that
that would have been a conference of women who are from the three faiths, and coming together and, let's say, talking about women's issues within the three faiths. I think it's a very beautiful, actually, thing They are very enthusiastic. The women are incredibly enthusiastic about it because I think whether we like it or not, we men, whether we like it or not, the women are the better communicators, and I think they do.
We should take a break at this point. We'll be back in a moment.
Mani Alleluia. Mani
Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity. We're speaking with Ian Hamilton of the Focolare movement. Now, I rudely cut the pair of us off, actually, when we started to say that women were more sensitive, more able to attach to spiritual issues or something like that. Carry on. What was it you were saying?
Well, I was saying that I think that the women's meeting of the JCMA is a really significant event because I think that the women have got, well, I think intrinsically by their nature, being mothers, they have an incredible capacity to really communicate with one another. And so I think that it is very significant that there is a women's meeting within the JCMA.
Yes, yes.
So, and I think they bring an awful lot of life to JCMA.
Well, your president or chairperson or at the head of the committee is a female at the moment, isn't it?
Yes, the president. Well, there's two roles. There's the president, who is Helen Light. She's a Jewish woman, and then there's the executive officer, and that is Jeanette Everest. Yeah.
How long has the JCMA been in existence? It's only recently.
I think JCMA started in about 2000, I don't want to be mistaken here, but I think it was about 2002 or a little bit later than that. And it was based on a German model, and somebody wanted to bring out the idea of the three Abrahamic faiths together.
Yes.
So as to really build a solid foundation. When I first got to know JCMA, I was very struck by the, let's say, the ethos of the JCMA, because they're very inclusive and very able to, let's say, talk about quite difficult issues without becoming, let's say, vindictive or anything like that. One of the things that they do is they have a joint journey to Jerusalem. They've had it now 2 years running, or over the last 4 years, where a group of Jews, Christians and Muslims, male and female, go on a journey to Jerusalem and make an experience as the Abrahamic faiths together in Jerusalem.
And what sort of outcomes have you seen from those trips?
Well, I think what's very good is that we can really share as an outcome, let's say, really share what is common to us, and that is the different places in Jerusalem that really mean are of importance to each religion.
All three,
and we can share them. You know, that's the important thing.
And how about when it must happen, is like on those tours or even in meetings, when you come up against a difficult place, have you got techniques for dealing with that? How do you deal with someone they obviously can't go past that block? There's some part of their own belief which resists. How do you deal with that?
Well, I think that I think we've all got, let's say, boundaries. Everyone's got a boundary. I think we have to accept the boundaries, because if you don't accept the boundaries, then you go into what is called conflict, and conflict doesn't resolve anything.
No.
So I mean, one of the greatest things that I would say that I learned from Chiara Lubich is that getting into an argument on anything is a total waste of time, because it doesn't build anything, and it just brings dissension.
Absolutely.
And we've got so much dissension in the world already. Why do we want to create more? So it's better to back down I mean, I have had, in the past, I've had people say to me, oh, yes, this Whakaari movement is absolute nonsense, and they do this and they do that and all the rest of it. So I remain silent, because, I mean, if somebody's already made up their mind that something, they're not going to accept something, there's nothing you can do to change their minds. And so there's no point in arguing.
No. Yeah. No. Did you, just a question I perhaps should have asked you before, did you ever meet Chiara?
I did, yes.
You
yes,
did?
yes, I did, yes.
And what was that like?
Well, she was an incredibly charismatic personality in many ways. And I think she really was a saint, because you were drawn to her because she was so loving, so in God, let's say. I mean, she said to us very clearly, look, I do not follow people, I follow God. And God is the one who draws everything in.
Yes.
And I think that that's true. I mean, we could become activists and rush around and, say this is a Whakaari this and a Whakaari that and Whakaari the other thing. But we don't do that, because that's not what it's about.
No.
It's about who am I within, and who am I in relationship to the other. And how do I look upon the other? Do I look upon the other with love, or do I look upon the other with a sense of distancing myself or feeling superior to? No. Everyone's equal. And we all have to, let's say, do our part in order so that we can meet. And we can meet if I'm in a disposition of acceptance of the other, and the other is in disposition of acceptance of me, and then we can hope that Jesus will be amongst us. And when Jesus is amongst us, then everything changes.
Yes, indeed, because he is the constant reminder of love itself, both by word and by presence. Now that's very inspirational. So the Whakaari movement, just in closing, it simply is, and it, as you said, there's people within the orders, etc., who attach to the principles, and it's the love which is the outcome from that, and which is the important thing. And thank you so much for taking us through the Whakaari and to the JCMA to the extent of your joint involvement in that, and they both seem to be a very comfortable fit. So thank you once again.
Thank you.
You've been watching Harmony and Diversity. We'll be back next week. Bye for now.
Baha'u'llah, Shanti Om, Allahu